Most people think the sound of betrayal is a scream, but for me, it was the soft, deliberate click of a brass latch sliding home. I was 33 years old, dressed in a charcoal suit, standing in the pitch-black air of my parents' coat closet while my phone buzzed uselessly in the kitchen, on the other side of the door. My sister was humming. She wasn't trying to let me out. She was waiting for my life to burn down. The notification hit my inbox at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, blinking on my phone screen like a lighthouse signal in the middle of a gray ocean. It was an email from the talent acquisition team at Hawthorne and Vale Consulting, and the subject line was short enough to make my heart hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Final round interview. I sat there in my cramped, sublet apartment, staring at the screen until the letters blurred. This was not just a job. Hawthorne and Vale was the gold standard in Briar Glen, the kind of firm that offered comprehensive relocation packages, six-figure base salaries, and actual stability for a 33-year-old woman who had spent the last 5 years piecing her career back together after a disastrous startup collapse and a humiliating breakup. This email was the exit door. It was the promise that I could finally stop scraping by. I could buy a house. I could breathe. The interview was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 sharp. I should have stayed in the city. I knew that. My gut, that quiet, bruised instinct I had spent a lifetime learning to ignore, told me to book a hotel room near the office park in Briar Glen. It told me to isolate myself, order room service, and review my portfolio in silence. But then I made the mistake of calling my mother. "Oh, Maddie, that is wonderful news," she said, her voice warm and thick with the specific guilt-tripping affection only mothers can weaponize. "But Briar Glen is an hour from the city with morning traffic. Why risk it? Just come stay at the house in Merriwick. You will be 20 minutes away. I will make that pot roast you like. It will take the stress off. It will take the stress off." The phrase hung in the air, seductive and false. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that my parents' house was a sanctuary and not a museum of my past failures. I wanted to believe that I could be the daughter who comes home for dinner and leaves successful the next morning. So, against every alarm bell ringing in my head, I agreed. I drove up on Wednesday evening. The house in Merriwick looked exactly as it always did. A sprawling colonial frozen in the late 90s, the lawn manicured to within an inch of its life. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt that familiar regression. The sensation of my adult confidence shedding away like dead skin, leaving me raw and teenage underneath. My mother met me at the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked tired, her smile tight at the edges. My father was in the den, the television blaring cable news, and he gave me a distracted wave. It was fine. It was normal. I carried my garment bag, the one holding my charcoal Italian wool suit, up to the guest room like it was the nuclear football. I had just laid the suit out on the bed, smoothing the invisible wrinkles, when the door swung open without a knock. Kendra. My sister swept into the room, bringing with her a cloud of expensive floral perfume and an energy that sucked the oxygen right out of the space. She was 2 years younger than me, but had always occupied more space. She was glowing, her hair perfectly blown out, a performative smile plastered across her face. "Maddie! Mom said you were here. Look at you." She hugged me. A quick, hard squeeze that felt less like an embrace and more like a frisk. She pulled back, holding me at arm's length, scanning my face for cracks. "You look tired," she said. "I am fine. Kendra, just prepping. Big day tomorrow." "Right. The interview, the consulting thing." She released me and wandered over to the bed, running a finger along the lapel of my suit. It was a violation, small but sharp. I wanted to swat her hand away. "It is very serious," she said, tilting her head, very structured. "Are you sure you are ready for that kind of pressure again? After the last time?" She was referring to the burnout I had suffered 3 years ago, a period of my life she loved to treat as a permanent diagnosis rather than a temporary stumble. "I am more than ready," I said, keeping my voice even. "It is a director-level role. Well, we are all rooting for you, obviously. She turned her back to me, examining my portfolio which sat on the nightstand. I moved to intercept her, but she was already flipping through it. Just try not to be too intense tomorrow, okay? You know how you get that look in your eyes. It scares people. She laughed. A tinkling, light sound that was meant to signal she was joking, but she was not joking. She never was. Here, let me help, she added, pivoting instantly from critic to savior. This suit needs steaming. It has crease lines from the car. I will take it down to the laundry room. I have that professional steamer. No, that is okay, I said, reaching for the hanger. Do not be silly. You need to focus on your notes. Let me be the good sister for once. She snatched the hanger before I could protest further and breezed out of the room, calling back over her shoulder, "Dinner is in 10. Relax. Maddie." I stood in the center of the guest room, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall. My chest felt tight. It was just a favor. I told myself, she was trying to be nice. I was being paranoid. I was being the difficult one, just like the family narrative always said. Dinner was an exercise in tension. My mother kept piling potatoes onto my plate, asking if I was eating enough, while my father asked vague questions about the job market that made it clear he did not understand what I actually did for a living. Kendra sat across from me, radiating that manic, helpful energy. She poured water, she cleared plates, she told stories about her charity work, centering herself as the saint of the suburbs. Every time I tried to speak about the interview, about the strategy presentation I had prepared, Kendra would interrupt with a concern. "Are you worried about the commute, though?" she asked, fork poised halfway to her mouth. "I mean, if you get the job, you will have to move." "Again, I am looking forward to moving." I said, "Right, but you just got settled in the city. You finally have a routine." I took a sip of wine, counting to 3 in my head. Growth requires change. Kendra. She smiled. That pitying, closed-lip smile she used when she thought I was being naive. "I just do not want you to crash. We all remember how hard it was for you to find that apartment." My mother chimed in then. "Kendra is just looking out for you. Madeline, she worries." "I know," I said, looking down at my plate. "I know. After dinner." I retreated to the guest room. My suit was hanging on the back of the door. Perfectly steamed, encased in plastic. I checked it for stains, for tears, for anything. It was pristine. I felt a flash of guilt for suspecting her. See? She helped. She wanted me to win. I spent the next 2 hours rehearsing my answers in the mirror, watching my own face, trying to scrub away the intensity Kendra had mentioned. I practiced smiling. I practiced looking relaxed. By 10 o'clock, I was exhausted. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. The hallway was dark, the house settling with the creaks and groans of timber cooling in the night. As I walked back toward the guest room, I heard a voice. It was low, urgent, coming from the master bedroom where Kendra had set up camp for the night. Claiming her old room was being painted, the door was cracked open an inch. "No," I heard her say. Her voice was stripped of the sweetness she had worn at dinner. It was cold, flat. "She cannot leave early. Not tomorrow." I froze, my toothbrush in my hand, my bare feet sinking into the plush hallway runner. "I do not care what the schedule is," she hissed. "Just push it. If she makes it there, she makes it, but not on time." My blood ran cold. I stood there, barely breathing, trying to make sense of the words. Who was she talking to? Was she talking about me? She laughed then. A dry, humorless sound. "I am handling it. Just be ready on your end." I took a step back, a floorboard whining under my weight. The talking stopped instantly. I held my breath, terrified. The silence stretched for 5 seconds, heavy and suffocating. Then, the door to the master bedroom opened. Kendra stood there, framed by the light from the bedside lamp. She was wearing silk pajamas, her phone clutched in her hand. Her face was a mask of suspicion, but the moment she saw me, the mask dissolved into warmth. "Maddie," she said, breathless, You startled me. Who were you talking to? I asked. My voice sounded thin. Oh, just Alyssa. We were talking about brunch this weekend. She is so dramatic about reservations. Alyssa was my best friend. Kendra barely knew her, and Alyssa certainly would not be plotting to make me late. You were talking about me. I said, I heard you say she cannot leave early. Kendra rolled her eyes, leaning against the doorframe. You are hearing things. I said she, meaning the hostess, said we cannot eat early. God, you are already spiraling, aren't you? This is exactly what I meant about the stress. She reached out and patted my arm. Go to sleep. Maddie, you are working yourself up over nothing. She closed the door before I could respond. I stood in the dark hallway, the toothbrush still in my hand, my heart racing. Gaslighting is not a sudden assault. It is a slow erosion of your reality. In that moment, standing in the dark, I doubted myself. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe I was projecting my anxiety onto her. Maybe I was the problem. I went back to bed, but I did not sleep well. I dreamed of running through quicksand, my legs heavy and useless, while Kendra stood on the bank, watching me with a stopwatch. I woke up at 6 a.m, an hour before my alarm. The morning sun was filtering through the blinds, casting slatted shadows across the room. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach, the residue of the night's anxiety. I needed to get moving. I needed to be out of this house. I showered quickly, the water pressure terrible, and wrapped myself in a towel. I went to the desk where I had left my leather portfolio, the one containing my resume, my references, and the printed slide deck for my presentation. It was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I tossed the duvet, checked under the bed, checked the nightstand. Nothing. I had placed it right there, next to the lamp, before I went to brush my teeth. I threw on my robe and stormed out into the hallway. Kendra was coming up the stairs, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She looked fresh, awake, innocent. Where is my folder? I demanded, skipping the pleasantries. Good morning to you too, she said, offering me a mug. I did not take it. My portfolio? It was on the desk. Where is it? Oh, that? I was just tidying up while you were in the shower. The room was a mess. I put it in your bag by the door so you would not forget it. I blinked, the adrenaline shifting into confusion. You put it in my bag? Yes, relax. I was saving you a step. I rushed past her, down the stairs to the foyer where my overnight bag sat. I unzipped it. The portfolio was there, wedged between my running shoes and a sweater. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. It was there. She had told the truth. I'm sorry. I called up the stairs, feeling foolish. I am just on edge. Clearly, she called back. Drink your coffee. You have plenty of time. I went back upstairs, dressed in the suit, and applied my makeup with a steady hand. I checked the time, 7:15. I needed to leave by 7:30 to be safe. I was on track. I packed everything up. I had my bag, my purse, my keys. I was ready. I walked into the kitchen to say goodbye to my mother. But the room was empty. A note on the counter read, Dad and I went for a walk. Good luck. Love you. It was just me and Kendra. She was leaning against the island, scrolling on her phone. You look great, she said, not looking up, very corporate. Thanks, I said. I am heading out. Wait, she said, pointing a manicured finger at my shoulder. You have lint all over your back. I twisted, trying to see. What? Must be from the car seat or the bedspread. It looks bad. Maddie, you cannot walk in there like that. My heart jumped. Do we have a roller? Yeah, in the hall closet. Top shelf. I checked my watch. 7:20. I had 10 minutes. Plenty of time. I walked into the hallway, the heels of my pumps clicking on the hardwood. The closet was an old, narrow space beneath the attic stairs, used mostly for winter coats and cleaning supplies. I opened the door. It was dark inside, the bulb having burned out years ago and never replaced. I do not see it, I said, leaning in, pushing aside a heavy wool greatcoat that smelled of mothballs. It is way in the back. Kendra said. She was right behind me now. Her voice was too close. I stepped deeper into the closet, squinting into the gloom. My hand brushed against plastic bottles, stacks of old magazines, a vacuum cleaner hose. Kendra, I do not see it. I felt a sudden shift in the air pressure, the presence of a body filling the doorway. I turned around. Kendra was standing there, one hand on the doorknob, the other resting on the frame. She was not smiling anymore. Her face was blank, terrifyingly neutral. "Oops," she said. She was blocking my exit. "Move, Kendra," I said, a laugh bubbling up in my throat, nervous and incredulous. "I have to go." She did not move. She just watched me, her eyes tracking the fear that was starting to bloom on my face. "You know," she said softly, "maybe you are not meant for this job. Maybe it is too much for you. Kendra, get out of the way. This isn't funny. I'm just trying to help you. Maddie, sometimes help looks like stopping you from making a mistake." She stepped back. "No!" I shouted, lunging forward, but I was too slow. The heavy oak door swung shut. The darkness swallowed me whole, and then the sound, the distinct, mechanical click of the deadbolt sliding into place. "Kendra!" I screamed, pounding on the wood with both fists. "Open this door! Open it right now!" Silence. Then, muffled through the wood, her voice, cheerful and bright. "I will just be in the garden. Kendra!" I slammed my shoulder against the door. It did not budge. It was solid oak, original to the house, built in an era when things were made to last. The knob turned uselessly in my hand. I spun around in the pitch black, my hands grasping for my pockets. My phone. I needed my phone. My hands met the smooth wool of my suit jacket, empty. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. My phone was not in my pocket. I had left it plugged into the charger on the kitchen counter, next to the note from my mother. No, 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 no. I sank to my knees, the smell of ammonia and stale dust filling my nose. It was cramped in there, the coats pressing in on me like silent, suffocating ghosts. The air was already starting to feel thin, hot. I looked at my watch, the glowing hands mocking me in the dark. 7:25. I had 5 minutes until I had to leave. I stood up and kicked the door, the impact jarring my leg all the way to the hip. "Open the door!" I screamed. "Mom! Dad! Anyone!" But my parents were on a walk, and Kendra was the one with the key. Time began to distort. Every second felt like an hour, and yet the minutes were slipping away like water through fingers. 7:30 came and went. I was officially running late. Panic, hot and white, clawed at my throat. I could not breathe. The walls were closing in. I was going to miss it. I was going to miss the interview, and they would think I was irresponsible, flaky, unreliable. Just like Kendra said, I forced myself to stop screaming. I needed to think. I needed to be the strategist they wanted to hire. I felt around the door frame. The hinges were on the outside. Of course they were. I felt the strike plate. It was tight, immovable. I crouched down, feeling the floorboards, dust, grit, a loose coin. Then, my fingers brushed against something metal. A vent. It was an old floor register, painted over a dozen times, connecting to the central heating system. If I could get it open, maybe I could make enough noise. Maybe the sound would travel. I grabbed the metal slats and pulled. Stuck. Painted shut. I needed a tool. I patted my waist. I was wearing a thin leather belt with a brass buckle. I unbuckled it, my hands shaking so hard I could barely work the clasp. I slid the belt off and used the prong of the buckle as a makeshift pry bar. I jammed it into the seam of the vent and levered it back. Paint chipped. I pushed harder, grunting with the effort. The metal groaned. "Come on," I whispered, sweat dripping down my forehead, stinging my eyes. "Come on." The buckle slipped. The sharp brass gouged deeply into my index finger. I cried out, shoving my bleeding finger into my mouth, tasting copper and dust. But the vent had moved. It was lifted about an inch. I put my face to the gap. The air coming through was cool. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. "Help!" I screamed into the vent. "Is anyone there? Help me!" My voice sounded small, tinny, swallowed by the ductwork. 7:45. I slumped against the wall, tears hot and angry tracking through my makeup. I was going to lose everything, because of a lint roller, because I trusted her. Then, a sound. The heavy thud of a car door closing outside, the crunch of boots on the gravel driveway. I scrambled up, pressing my ear to the crack between the door and the frame. The doorbell rang. 2 sharp chimes. A delivery driver. Hope surged through me, electric and agonizing. I heard the front door open, Kendra's voice, bright and welcoming. "Hi there. Can I help you?" "Yeah. Package for Ward. Sign here. Please." I dropped to the floor and put my mouth to the vent. I screamed with everything I had left in my lungs. "Hey, I am in here. Help!" I pounded the belt buckle against the metal vent. Clang, clang, clang. Upstairs. The conversation faltered. "Did you hear that?" the driver asked. His voice was muffled but audible. "Hear what?" Kendra asked. Her tone was casual, perfectly pitched. "Sounds like banging and yelling." "Oh," Kendra laughed. "That, we have an old boiler in the basement. It makes the most terrible racket when it kicks on. We are getting it fixed next week." I screamed again. "No, not the boiler. Closet. I am in the closet." I banged the vent so hard I thought the metal would snap. The driver hesitated. It sounded like a voice. "Ma'am, it is just the pipes. I promise. Old houses, right? I need a signature," the driver said. His voice wary now. "But I do not know. That sounds like a person." "Sign the pad," Kendra said, her voice dropping a fraction. "Please, I have to get back to work." I took a deep breath. I knew I had one shot. I pressed my lips directly against the gap in the vent and shrieked, enunciating every syllable. "Blue truck. Do not leave. She locked me in. Call the police." Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. Then, the driver's voice, loud and clear. "Ma'am, step away from the door." "Excuse me?" Kendra said, the charm evaporating. "I heard you. Someone is yelling for help. I'm calling 911 right now." "No. Wait," Kendra said. "I am dialing. Ma'am, 1-1? Okay, fine. Jesus!" I heard heavy footsteps stomping toward the closet. The key rattled in the lock. The bolt slid back with a violent snap. The door flew open, blinding me with the sudden influx of light. Kendra stood there, her face twisted in a snarl I had never seen before. It was pure, unadulterated rage. "You are making a scene," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. I stumbled out, my legs trembling so badly I almost fell. I gasped for air, clutching my bleeding finger to my chest. The delivery driver, a burly man in a blue uniform, was standing in the foyer, his phone held up, his eyes wide with shock. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked. Looking from me to Kendra, I looked at Kendra. Her mask was gone. She wasn't the concerned sister anymore. She was the jailer who had lost control of the prisoner. I looked down at my watch. 7:55. I was late. My suit was wrinkled. My finger was bleeding. I was humiliated. But as I looked at the key clutched in Kendra's hand, the key she was supposed to be looking for, the key she had on her the entire time, something inside me snapped. Not a break, but a setting, like a bone being reset. "I am fine." I choked out, my voice raspy. "You see?" Kendra said to the driver, forcing a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Just a sisterly prank. She gets so claustrophobic." The driver did not smile. He looked at me. "Do you want me to call the cops?" I looked at Kendra. I saw the fear flicker in her eyes for the first time. She knew she had gone too far. She knew there was a witness. "No," I said, straightening my spine, pulling the shredded dignity of my suit around me. "No police. I have an interview to get to." I grabbed my bag. I grabbed my keys. I walked past Kendra without looking at her. I did not scream. I did not slap her. I just walked out the door, into the morning air, and got into my car. I was awake now, and I would never sleep again. I drove the 20 miles to Briar Glen with my hands gripped so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles turned the color of old bone. My speedometer crept past 80, then 85, the landscape of Massachusetts suburbs blurring into a streak of green and gray. I was not thinking about the speed limit. I was not thinking about safety. I was vibrating with a chaotic frequency of rage and terror that made the car feel like a cage I was merely transporting from one location to another. I parked the car in the Hawthorne and Vale lot at 9:12 in the morning. I took up 2 spaces. I did not care. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. My skin was pale, ghostly against the dark charcoal of my suit, and there was a smudge of dust on my jawline from the closet floor. I licked my thumb and scrubbed it off. The friction burning my skin. I reapplied my lipstick, a shade called Powerberry that suddenly felt like war paint. My finger, the one I had sliced on the vent, was throbbing beneath the tissue I had wrapped around it, but the pain was distant, like a radio playing in another room. I walked into the lobby at 9:15. I was 15 minutes late for the most important interview of my life. The receptionist looked up, her expression a mix of pity and judgment. "Madeline Ward?" "Yes," I said. "I am so sorry." I had an unexpected delay. I did not explain. I did not tell her that my sister had imprisoned me in a coat closet. I did not tell her that I had been screaming for help into a heating vent 20 minutes ago. I had learned early in my career that explanations, no matter how valid, often sounded like excuses. Leaders did not have excuses. They had solutions. "I am ready now," I said, smoothing the front of my jacket. She buzzed me through. The interview was a blur, but not in the way I expected. Usually, when I was nervous, my brain felt like it was wading through molasses. I would stumble over words, second-guess my syntax. But today, fueled by the massive dump of adrenaline Kendra had kindly engineered, I was razor-sharp. The cortisol in my system had stripped away my anxiety and left behind a cold, crystalline clarity when the senior partner, a woman named Elias with eyes like flint, asked me how I handled high-pressure conflicts. I almost laughed. "I focus on the immediate variables," I said, my voice steady, my hands folded perfectly on the mahogany table. "I assess the constraints. I identify the leverage points, and I execute a solution that minimizes damage. Panic is a luxury I cannot afford." I was not talking about consulting. I was talking about the delivery driver. I was talking about the vent. Elias nodded, impressed. "That is a very pragmatic approach." "Madeline, I nailed it." I walked out of that conference room an hour later knowing, with absolute certainty, that I had secured the job. I had turned a disaster into a performance. But as I walked back to my car, the adrenaline began to recede, leaving behind a hollow, trembling exhaustion. I sat in the driver's seat, the engine off, and stared at the brick facade of the office building. The silence of the car was heavy. And then, the realization hit me. It started as a small, nagging thought and bloomed rapidly into a horrifying epiphany. The key. When the delivery driver had threatened to call the police, Kendra had unlocked the door instantly. There was no fumbling. There was no running to the kitchen to search the junk drawer or checking the hooks by the garage. She had produced the key immediately. She had the key in her pocket. She had been standing on the other side of that door, listening to me scream, listening to me beg, with the cold metal of the key pressing against her thigh. She had not locked me in by accident. She had not lost the key. She had stood there and made a choice, every second that I was in the dark, wondering if I would lose my future, was a second she had curated. It was not panic. It was power. I started the car. My hands were shaking again. But this time, it was not from fear. It was from a fury so cold it felt like ice water in my veins. I drove back to Marwick. I had to retrieve my overnight bag. I had to face them. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked innocuous. The sun was high and bright, casting innocent shadows across the lawn. It was the perfect suburban camouflage for the rot inside. I walked in through the front door. My mother was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for lunch. Kendra was nowhere to be seen. "Madeline!" my mother chirped, her voice pitching up a little too high. "You are back. How did it go? We were so worried when you rushed out like that." I did not answer her immediately. I walked past her, my heels clicking loudly on the tile, and went straight to the hallway closet. "Madeline?" my mother asked, the knife pausing in her hand. I opened the closet door. The smell of the chemicals and the wool coats rushed out at me, triggering a phantom tightness in my chest. I ignored it. I knelt down and looked at the lock mechanism. It was an old brass mortise lock, the kind with a skeleton key, but the metal around the latch was gleaming. There was a faint, oily sheen on the wood, fresh lubricant. I touched it, rubbing the residue between my fingers. WD-40. I looked at the strike plate on the door frame. The screws were bright gold, unmarred by time. They were new. Someone had tightened this plate recently, ensuring the door would hold fast. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the lock. I took a photo of the strike plate. "Madeline, what on earth are you doing?" My mother was standing in the hallway now, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her face was pinched with that specific expression she wore whenever reality threatened to intrude on her carefully constructed world. I stood up. "Who oiled this lock?" "Mom?" "What?" "The lock. It is freshly oiled, and these screws are new." "Oh, for heaven's sake," she sighed, waving a hand dismissively. "Your father was puttering around last weekend fixing things. You know how he is. He probably tightened it." "And the key?" I asked. "Where is the key kept?" "Usually on the hook in the pantry," she said. "Why are you acting like this?" I walked into the kitchen, my mother trailing me. I opened the pantry door. There, on a small brass hook behind the spice rack, hung the skeleton key. "Kendra told me the key is never in the kitchen," I said, taking a photo of the key hanging there. "She said she had no idea where it was." My mother laughed. A nervous, brittle sound. "Well, you know Kendra. She is not very observant with household things. She probably just forgot. She had it in her pocket." "Mom," I said. I turned to face her. She unlocked the door the second the driver threatened to call the police. She had it the whole time. My mother's face hardened. She crossed her arms, creating a physical barrier between us. "Madeline, stop it. You are sounding very paranoid. It was a misunderstanding. The door stuck. You panicked, and Kendra got flustered. That is all. She did not get flustered. She trapped me." "You are very stressed lately," my mother said, her voice dropping into that soothing, gaslighting register. "We all see it. You are working too hard. You are seeing malice where there is only confusion." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It was not fear for me. It was fear of the truth. She knew, somewhere, deep down in the repressed corners of her psyche, she knew exactly what Kendra was, but acknowledging it would mean dismantling the entire family mythology. My father walked in from the garage then, smelling of sawdust. He saw the tension in the room and immediately looked at the floor. "Hey, Maddie," he mumbled. "How was the interview?" "She thinks Kendra locked her in the closet on purpose." "Bob," my mother said, looking at him with a silent plea to fix this. My father winced. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Now, Maddie, honey, that is a heavy thing to say. Maybe you bumped the door? Old houses settle." I felt the familiar gravity of my family pulling at me, trying to bend my spine until I bowed to their narrative. The physics of this house were simple. Reality bends around Kendra. She is the sun, and we are just the debris burning up in her orbit. "Where is she?" I asked. "She went to get coffee," my mother said. She felt terrible. "Madeline, she was crying after you left. She wanted to do something nice for you. Of course she did." I went upstairs to pack my bag. I threw my clothes in haphazardly, my hands shaking again. I just wanted to leave. I wanted to get back to the city, to my apartment, to a place where doors opened when I turned the knob, when I came back down. Kendra was in the kitchen. She was holding a cardboard carrier with 4 Starbucks cups. Her eyes were red-rimmed, puffy, a masterclass in performed remorse. "Maddie," she choked out. Putting the coffee on the counter, she rushed toward me, arms open. "I am so sorry. I do not know what happened. I panicked. I heard you screaming and I froze. I am so stupid." She tried to hug me. I took a step back. "Do not touch me," I said. The room went deadly silent. My parents exchanged a look of horror. Kendra stopped, her arms falling to her sides, her lower lip trembling. "I bought you a latte," she whispered. "Pumpkin spice, your favorite. I do not want your coffee. Kendra, I want to know why you had the key in your pocket." Kendra blinked, looking at our parents for support. I found it, in the junk drawer, right when the man knocked. I was looking for it the whole time." "Liar," I said. "Madeline," my father barked, finding his voice only to defend the peace. "Never the victim. That is enough. Your sister is apologizing." I looked at the three of them, a tableau of dysfunction, the martyr mother, the avoidance father, the predator sister. "I am leaving," I said. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the front door. "Maddie, wait," Kendra called out. She followed me onto the porch. My parents stayed inside, likely relieved the conflict was moving off their linoleum. I walked to my car and threw my bag in the passenger seat. I opened the driver's side door. Kendra was standing by the hood of my car. Her arms wrapped around herself, shivering in the mild afternoon air. "Please do not be mad," she said. Her voice was small, childlike. It is the voice she used to get out of speeding tickets and broken curfews. I looked at her over the roof of the car. "I am not mad. Kendra, I am done." She stared at me. The sorrow on her face evaporated like mist under a heat lamp. Her expression smoothed out, becoming blank and terrifyingly calm. She took a step closer to the car. "You are not done," she said quietly. "Excuse me? You think you can just drive away? Get some big job and forget about us?" "I am not forgetting about anyone. I am living my life. You are not leaving this family behind." "Madeline," she said. Her voice was a low hum, intimate and threatening. "You belong here, with us, with me." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. This was not a sister missing her sibling. This was a jailer threatening an escapee. "Watch me," I said. I got into the car and locked the doors, all of them. I backed out of the driveway, watching her through the windshield. She did not wave. She just stood there, a statue on the manicured lawn, watching me go. I did not breathe until I hit the highway. I called Alyssa 20 minutes later. I needed to hear a sane voice. I needed to hear someone who lived in the real world. "She locked you in a closet?" Alyssa asked, her voice rising an octave. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said, holding the phone to my ear with a trembling hand. She had the key. "Alyssa. She trapped me. She tried to make me miss the interview." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I expected Alyssa to gasp, to scream, to validate my horror with equal emotional weight. But Alyssa was a lawyer, and she approached the world with a forensic detachment that I desperately needed right now. "Do you have proof?" she asked. The question hung in the air, sharp and practical. I took pictures of the lock. I said, "And the key, and I have the delivery driver." He heard me screaming. "Good," Alyssa said. "Keep that. Write down his name if you can remember it. Call the delivery company and file a complaint about the package just to get a paper trail of the time he was there." "Why?" I asked. "It is not like I'm going to sue her." "Maddie," Alyssa said, her voice dropping, "this isn't normal sibling rivalry. This is escalation. If she is willing to physically trap you to sabotage your career, you need to stop treating her like a sister and start treating her like a liability. You need evidence." Her words flipped a switch in my brain. A liability. I hung up and drove the rest of the way in silence, but my mind was racing. I started to replay the last 10 years of my life, viewing them not through the lens of bad luck, but through the lens of sabotage. The time I missed my flight to Chicago for my cousin's wedding because my alarm didn't go off. Kendra had been the last one in my room. The time my passport went missing 2 days before my study abroad trip, only to turn up in the pocket of a coat I never wore, a coat Kendra had borrowed. The time my ex-boyfriend broke up with me because someone told him I was still seeing my college fling. Kendra had been the one consoling him. It was a pattern, a tapestry of small, precise cuts designed to keep me tethered, to keep me failing, to keep me needing her. When I got back to my apartment, I did not unpack. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I created a new document. I named it The Log. I started typing. October 14th. Incident at Merriwick, locked in closet. Duration, approximately 30 minutes. Witness, delivery driver. FedEx. Evidence, photos of oiled lock. Photo of key in pantry. September 3rd. Missed dinner reservation with potential client. Kendra claimed she changed the time in my calendar to help. July 12th. Lost car keys at family. BQ. Kendra found them in the trash can. I typed for an hour. By the time I was done, I had 3 pages of incidents. The pattern was undeniable. Kendra's sabotage spiked every single time I was about to advance. Every time I reached for independence, she reached for my ankles. 2 days later, the email from Hawthorne and Vale arrived. Dear Madeline, we are pleased to inform you that you are moving to the final reference check stage. My stomach dropped. References. Kendra knew everyone. She knew my old bosses. She was Facebook friends with my colleagues. She was charming. Helpful Kendra who planned the holiday parties and sent thank you notes. If a recruiter called my house, or if Kendra found out who they were contacting, she could poison the well. She could drop a casual comment about my health, my stability, my stress levels. I picked up the phone and called the recruiter directly. My heart was hammering, but I forced my voice to remain calm, professional. Hi, this is Madeline Ward. I am so excited about the next steps. I wanted to provide you with an updated list of references. Oh, we have the ones from your application, the recruiter said. I know, but I would prefer you use this specific list. Also, I need to share something with you in confidence. I paused, taking a breath. I was about to violate the cardinal rule of families. Keep the secrets inside the house. I have a family member who is currently struggling with some personal issues. I said, keeping the language neutral. There have been instances where this person has attempted to interfere with my professional communications. If you receive any unsolicited contact regarding my application, or if anyone claims to speak on my behalf, please disregard it and contact me directly. There was a silence on the line. I held my breath. Had I sounded crazy? Had I sounded like drama? I understand, the recruiter said, her voice softening with professional empathy. Thank you for letting us know. We will flag your file. We only speak to the contacts you provide. I exhaled. I had drawn a boundary. It felt like setting a brick in a wall, but walls work both ways. They keep things out, but they also show the enemy exactly where you are standing. Kendra did not call me. She did not text. But 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Kendra Ward tagged you in a photo. I opened the app. It was a grainy, sepia-toned photo from our childhood. I was about 7, crying over a skinned knee, my face blotchy and red. Kendra, 5 years old, was standing next to me, looking angelic, patting my head. The caption read, "Thinking about my big sister today. She has always been so fragile, even when we were little. Sending you strength. Maddie, we are all here for you if you need to come home and rest. Family First Mental Health Sisters." I stared at the screen. It was a masterpiece of aggression disguised as affection. To the outside world, it looked like a loving sister supporting a sibling through a tough time. But the message was clear. Madeline is weak. Madeline is unstable. Madeline needs to come home. The comments were already rolling in. Oh no. Is she okay? Sending prayers. You are such a good sister. Kendra. Hope she gets the help she needs. She was building a narrative. She was planting the seeds of my instability in the public consciousness so that if I ever tried to tell the truth about her, I would look like the crazy one lashing out at her saintly sister. My thumb hovered over the delete tag button. I wanted to scream. I wanted to comment back and say, "I am not fragile. You sociopath." But I remembered Alyssa's voice. Proof. I did not delete the tag. I did not comment. I took a screenshot. I saved it to a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence. Then, I did something I had never done before. I made an appointment with a therapist. Not just any therapist, but a specialist at the Briar Glen Wellness Group who focused on family systems and high-conflict personalities. I walked into Dr. Evans' office a week later. I did not sit on the couch and cry. I sat in the chair, my spine straight, my notebook open on my lap. I am not here to vent. I told her, I am here because I'm about to enter a war, and I need to understand the enemy's tactics, Doctor. Evans was a woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and comfortable shoes. She nodded. Tell me what is happening. I told her about the closet, the key, the whisper in the driveway, the social media post. She listened without interrupting. When I was finished, she leaned forward. You are describing a coercive control system, she said. Your sister is using triangulation, gaslighting, and reputation destruction to maintain a power dynamic. This isn't about love, Madeline, it is about ownership. Hearing the words out loud was like turning on a light in a dark room. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just sisters fighting. It was a system, and systems could be dismantled. Doctor. Evans looked at my notebook. You are writing this down? Yes. I said, good. She said, because the most dangerous thing you can do with a person like this is react emotionally. They feed on emotion. You need to be boring. You need to be a gray rock. And you need to protect your perimeter. She gave me language for what was happening. Hoovering, flying monkeys, Darvo. I left the session feeling exhausted, but grounded. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a student. I drove back to my apartment, the city lights flickering past. I had the job. I had the lawyer friend. I had the therapist. I had the log. I was building a fortress. But as I unlocked my apartment door, I felt a shiver of dread. I knew Kendra. I knew that silence from her wasn't peace. It was just the deep breath before the scream. She was not done. She was just reloading. I checked the lock on my apartment door. I turned the deadbolt. Then, I wedged a heavy chair under the handle, just in case. The offer letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered not with fanfare, but with the quiet, authoritative ping of a priority email. I sat at my makeshift desk in the city, the screen glowing blue against the dim afternoon light, and read the terms 3 times. The salary was 40% higher than my previous role. There was a signing bonus. There was a relocation package generous enough to hire full-service movers, the kind who wrap your dishes in white paper and hang your clothes in wardrobe boxes so you never have to touch a hanger. The start date was set for 6 weeks from today. I should have felt ecstatic. This was the summit. This was the moment I had been climbing toward for 5 years. Clawing my way out of debt and professional obscurity, I put my hand over my mouth, feeling the sudden sting of tears. But they were not tears of pure joy. They were hot and complicated, braided with a heavy, sinking dread. Success in my family was not celebrated. It was punished. Success meant you did not need them. And if you did not need them, they could not control you. I looked at the number on the screen, $140,000 a year, and I did not see freedom. I saw a target painted on my back. I accepted the offer within the hour. Then, I closed my laptop and stared at the door, half expecting Kendra to barge in. Even though she was 20 miles away in Marowak, I had to go back there. I had to pack the last of my childhood things before the move to Briar Glen became permanent. I told myself I could handle it. I had my log. I had my boundaries. I was a gray rock. The weekend dinner began with a terrifying surplus of goodwill. My mother had made beef Wellington, a dish reserved for holidays and apologies. My father poured expensive wine. Kendra sat at the end of the table, dressed in a soft cashmere sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose, unthreatening bun. She smiled at me as I sat down, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but did a good job of mimicking human warmth. "We are so proud of you." "Madeline," my mother said, raising her glass. "A senior role. Imagine that. It is a great opportunity," I said. Taking a small sip of wine, I kept my voice flat. "Unexciting. But we were thinking," my father said, clearing his throat. He looked at my mother, then at Kendra, then at his plate. "We know you are looking to buy a place, and with interest rates the way they are, well, it is tough out there." "It is," I agreed. "So we want to help," my mother said. She leaned forward, her eyes shining with generosity. "We have decided to gift you the down payment, $50,000 from the family savings." I froze. $50,000? It was a life-changing amount of money. It would mean I wouldn't have to scrape for another 2 years. It would mean security. But then came the conjunction. "However," my mother continued, her voice taking on a practical, business-like lilt, "we want to make sure you are making a smart investment. We think it would be best if you looked in Marowak, or maybe East Marowak, somewhere within a 15-minute drive, and we would want you to commit to Sunday dinners. Obviously," Kendra added softly, buttering a roll, "we do not want you to get too big for your britches and forget where you came from." The air in the room shifted. I saw the strings. They were not even thin. Invisible fishing lines. They were thick, heavy chains. They were offering me money to buy a house, but only if that house was effectively an annex of their control. They wanted me close enough to monitor, close enough to summon. I looked at my father. He was cutting his meat with intense concentration, refusing to meet my gaze. I looked at Kendra. She was watching me, waiting for the greed to win. She knew how much I wanted a home. She thought she had priced my freedom at exactly $50,000. I remembered Alyssa's voice on the phone yesterday. "Money with strings is a leash. Maddie, do not put your neck in it." I placed my fork down on the table. The clink was the only sound in the room. "That is an incredibly generous offer." I said, "Thank you." My mother beamed. "Of course, darling. We are family, but I cannot accept it." I said. The smile slid off my mother's face like wet clay. "Excuse me? I am going to handle the purchase myself," I said, "and I'm looking closer to Briar Glen to be near the office. The commute from Marowak would be too much." My father stopped chewing. My mother looked as if I had slapped her. "Too much?" my mother repeated. 20 minutes is too much? We are offering you $50,000. Madeline, you are going to throw that away because you do not want to drive 20 minutes? It is not about the drive. Mom, I want to do this on my own terms. On your own terms, Kendra echoed. She let out a short, sharp laugh. You mean you want to run away? You think you are too good for this town now. I turned to her. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself. I just looked at her. I am not running away. Kendra, I am moving for work. You are being selfish, my mother snapped, the mask of benevolence shattering completely. We are trying to help you build a life. Why do you always have to make everything a conflict? I am not making it a conflict. I am politely declining a gift. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. My father took a long drink of wine. My mother stared at the wall, her eyes watering with the weaponized martyrdom she had perfected over 3 decades. Kendra just smirked. She took a bite of her roll, chewed slowly, and looked at me with a terrifying satisfaction. She had what she wanted. I was the ungrateful daughter again. I was the villain. The narrative was safe. I finished my meal in silence. The next morning, I was back in the city, packing boxes, when my phone buzzed with a notification from my credit monitoring app. I usually ignored them, usually just alerts about a balance change, but this one was different. New inquiry, Bramwell and Pierce Legal. I frowned. I didn't know a Bramwell and Pierce. I clicked the details. It was a soft inquiry, the kind that happens when a company checks your background for pre-approval or identity verification. But it was a law firm. I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck. I looked up the number for Bramwell and Pierce. They were a small firm located in Marowak. I called them, Bramwell and Pierce. How may I direct your call? A receptionist answered, Hi, my name is Madeline Ward. I noticed an inquiry on my credit report from your office, and I was hoping you could tell me what it is regarding. I have not retained your firm. One moment. Let me check the logs. I waited, listening to the hold music, my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Ms. Ward? The receptionist came back. Yes, that inquiry was part of a standard asset verification for the Ward family file. We were updating some information regarding the estate planning documents at the request of the family representative. The family representative? I asked. Who authorized the check on me? Well, we received the authorization form from Kendra Ward. It was part of a batch update for the family trust and emergency contacts. My hand tightened on the phone. Kendra. I never signed an authorization for her to run my credit. I said. The receptionist sounded confused. I have a signature on file here. It is dated, let's see, 4 years ago. A durable power of attorney for family emergencies? I closed my eyes. 4 years ago. The year I had burned out. The year I had come home, shattered and depressed, and spent 2 months sleeping in the guest room. My mother had put stacks of papers in front of me. Insurance forms, medical release forms, just paperwork. Honey, just in case something happens. I had signed them. I had signed them because I was tired and I trusted them. I need you to send me a copy of that document immediately. I said, my voice cold. And I am revoking that authorization effective this second. If you run my information again without my direct written consent, I will file a complaint with the Bar Association. I hung up. I felt violated. It wasn't just about the credit score. It was the fact that Kendra could look at my financial life whenever she wanted. She could see my debt-to-income ratio. She could see my student loans. She was tracking me. I called my mother. I didn't wait for pleasantries. Mom, did you have me sign a power of attorney giving Kendra access to my records? There was a pause, a hesitation that screamed guilt. I do not know what you are talking about. Madeline, Bramwell and Pierce, they just told me Kendra authorized a credit check on me using a document from 4 years ago. Oh, that, my mother said, her voice airy and dismissive. That was just paperwork. Madeline, everyone does it. We just wanted to make sure everything was in order in case you got sick again. You were in a bad way back then. We needed to be able to handle things for you. I am 33 years old. Mom, I am not sick, and Kendra is not my guardian. She is your sister. She was just trying to help organize the estate planning. Why are you so secretive? What are you hiding? I am not hiding anything. I am having privacy. I hung up before she could guilt me further. I was shaking. The violation felt physical, like finding footprints in my bedroom. I did not spiral. I did not cry. I opened my laptop and searched for a lawyer in Briar Glen. I found a woman named Sarah Jenkins who specialized in estate law and identity protection. I booked an emergency consultation for the next morning. The meeting with Sarah was swift and surgical. I sat in her office, explaining the situation without emotion. I told her about the closet. I told her about the accidents. I told her about the credit check. Sarah listened, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. You need to sever the digital umbilical cord, she said. Right now. She walked me through the steps. We drafted a formal revocation of all power of attorney documents. We sent it via certified mail to my parents and to Bramwell and Pierce. We placed a freeze on my credit with all 3 bureaus. Then came the hard part. You need to change everything, Sarah said. Every password, every security question. If your sister knows the name of your first pet or the street you grew up on, she can reset your accounts. You need to lie. Lie? On the security questions. If they ask for your mother's maiden name, put pizza. If they ask for your high school mascot, put Saturn. The answers do not have to be true. They just have to be consistent. I spent the next 6 hours scrubbing my digital life. I changed my email passwords. I changed my banking logins. I removed my mother as the emergency contact at my doctor's office and replaced her with Alyssa. It felt like boarding up windows before a hurricane. But the hurricane did not hit the windows. It seeped in under the door. 2 days later, the text started. It began with my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who lived in Ohio. Maddie, honey, just hearing some worrying things. Are you okay? Please call me. We love you. Then my cousin Becky. Hey, heard you're having a rough time. Just wanted to say I am here if you need to talk. Don't push people away, okay? Then my godmother, Madeline. Your mother is beside herself. Please let us know you are safe. Mental health is nothing to be ashamed of. I stared at my phone, the messages stacking up like bricks in a wall. Kendra. She wasn't attacking me directly. She was launching a concern campaign. She was calling the extended family, probably crying, telling them I was having a breakdown or a relapse. She was framing my boundaries as symptoms of mental illness. She was telling them I was making accusations because I was paranoid. It was brilliant. It was evil. If I lashed out and told them Kendra was a sociopath, I would sound exactly like the unstable person she described. If I stayed silent, I confirmed their fears that I was withdrawing. I felt the urge to text back, to defend myself, to write paragraphs explaining the truth. I am not crazy. She locked me in a closet. I called Dr. Evans instead. Do not explain. Doctor, Evans said firmly, do not defend. The moment you try to convince them you are sane, you lose. You are playing her game. So what do? I asked, pacing my living room. They think I'm having a psychotic break. You send one message, identical, to everyone. You act like a CEO handling a PR issue. You are calm. You are boring. You are brief. We drafted the text together. I typed it out, my thumbs hovering over the send button. I am safe, healthy, and working hard at my new job. Please do not rely on third-party information about my life. If you have concerns, ask me directly. I will not be discussing this further. I sent it to Aunt Linda. I sent it to Becky. I sent it to my godmother. The response was silence. Kendra would be furious. I hadn't given her the fuel she wanted. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged to be understood. I had simply stated facts, but I knew this wasn't over. I had to go back to the house one last time. I had to get the rest of my things. I drove to Merriwick on a Saturday when I knew my parents would be at the club and Kendra would be at yoga. I wanted to be in and out in an hour. I went straight to my old bedroom. It had been turned into a guest room years ago. But the closet still held boxes of my high school yearbooks, old trophies, and binders of schoolwork. I was clearing it all out. I didn't want to leave anything behind that they could hold hostage later. I was emptying the bottom drawer of an old pine desk that had belonged to my grandmother. It was filled with dried-out pens and loose paper clips. I pulled the drawer all the way out to check for anything that had slipped behind it. There, wedged between the back of the drawer and the frame of the desk, was a manila file folder. It was dusty, the edges curled with age. I pulled it out. The label was typed on a typewriter. Ward Family Trust, and underneath, in smaller letters, beneficiary, Madeline Ward, conditional. I frowned. I had never heard of a Ward Family Trust. My parents always said we were comfortable but careful. They complained about the cost of college. They acted as though money was a finite resource that had to be hoarded. I opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of legal documents. They looked old, maybe 10 or 12 years. I scanned the pages. Assets to be held in trust for the benefit of the grandchildren. Distribution upon the age of 25. Provided that the pages were incomplete. Sentences cut off at the bottom. There were no signature pages. It looked like someone had copied the document in a hurry, missing the most important parts. But the phrase, beneficiary, conditional stuck in my throat. I was 33. If there was a trust that was supposed to distribute funds at 25, where was it? Had I missed a condition? Had I failed some test I didn't know I was taking? I thought about the family savings offer, $50,000. Was that their money? Or was it mine? Was it a bribe paid with my own inheritance to keep me quiet and compliant? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the motive. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just that Kendra hated me. It was money. It was always money. I shoved the folder into my bag. I needed to show this to Sarah. I needed to find the original documents. I grabbed the last box of books and hauled it downstairs. The house was quiet, filled with the ticking of the grandfather clock. I felt like a thief in the home I grew up in. I walked into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water from the fridge before the drive back. I stopped. On the kitchen island, sitting on one of the bar stools, was a purse. It was a large, expensive leather tote. It was open. Inside, I could see a wallet, a tube of lipstick, and a phone. Kendra's purse. She wasn't at yoga. I spun around, scanning the room. The house was silent. "Kendra?" I called out. No answer. My eyes darted to the pantry door. It was slightly ajar. I walked over to it, my steps silent on the tile. I looked at the small brass hook behind the spice rack, the one where the skeleton key to the closet usually hung. The hook was empty, a cold chill, sharper and more violent than anything I had felt before, washed over me. She was here. She was in the house, and she had the key. I didn't call out again. I didn't look for her. I backed out of the kitchen, my eyes scanning every doorway, every shadow. I grabbed my bag with the stolen trust documents. I grabbed my car keys. I ran. I got into my car, locked the doors, and peeled out of the driveway. As I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the curtains in the living room window twitch, just a little, just enough to let me know I was being watched. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to know that she was there, that she had the key, and that she was waiting. I drove toward Briar Glen, the file folder burning a hole in my bag. I wasn't just fighting a sister anymore. I was fighting a conspiracy, and I was done playing defense. The conference room at the law offices of Sarah Jenkins smelled of lemon polish and old paper. It was a sterile, climate-controlled environment that felt light years away from the dusty, claustrophobic air of the closet in Marowak, but my hands were shaking just the same. Sarah sat across from me, the manila folder I had stolen from my parents' house spread open on the table between us. She had been reading in silence for 10 minutes. I watched her eyes track back and forth, her expression shifting from professional neutrality to a sharp, focused frown. Finally, she looked up. "Madeline," she said, her voice careful. "Where exactly did you find this?" "In an old desk," I said. "It was wedged behind a drawer. My parents said it was just old paperwork. Copies of things that did not matter." Sarah tapped a finger on the document. "This is not just paperwork. This appears to be a section of an irrevocable trust established by your grandmother, Eleanor Ward. And the language here is specific. What does it say?" I asked. She turned the page around so I could read the highlighted paragraph. "Primary distribution of assets to be made to the beneficiaries upon the attainment of their 25th birthday, provided that said beneficiaries are engaged in full-time employment or higher education, and are not deemed to be suffering from incapacitating instability." I stared at the words, incapacitating instability. It continues. Sarah said, "It lists you and Kendra as equal beneficiaries, but look at the amendment date on this copy. It is dated 3 weeks after your grandmother died." I frowned. "How can you amend a trust after the person is dead?" "You cannot," Sarah said, "unless the trust grants specific powers of appointment to a surviving trustee, or unless what? Unless someone reinterpreted the instability clause to block a distribution." The room seemed to tilt. I thought back to when I was 25. I was working at a marketing firm in Chicago. I was paying my own rent. I was happy. I was stable. But that was also the year I had broken up with my long-term boyfriend. I had been sad. I had called my mother crying a few times. Had they used that? Had they taken normal, human grief and painted it as incapacitating instability to keep my inheritance locked away? "This is why they do not want you to be independent," Sarah said, leaning back. "If you are successful, if you are thriving, their argument for withholding the funds collapses. The lock-in, the sabotage, the constant narrative that you are fragile. It is not just emotional abuse. Madeline, it is a fiduciary strategy." I felt a wave of nausea. It was one thing to think my sister was mean. It was another to think my entire family had been running a financial long con on me for a decade. "What do we do?" I asked. "We go official." Sarah said, "We stop asking nicely. I am going to draft a formal demand letter to the trustee, which I assume is your father or a co-trustee arrangement with Kendra, and to the law firm that handled the estate. We are going to demand a full accounting of the trust, the original instrument, and all distribution records. They will be furious." I said, "Let them be." Sarah replied, "Betrayal looks very different when it is printed on legal letterhead." I authorized the letters. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message sitting in my car in the parking lot of my new office. "Maddie, it is Dad. We just got a letter from a lawyer. I do not understand what is happening. Mom is crying. We have always handled everything fairly. Why are you attacking us like this? Just call me." I did not call him. I texted him instead. "I am not attacking anyone. My lawyer is requesting documents that I'm entitled to see. Once I review them, we can talk." The response came from Kendra. "So now you are accusing Mom and Dad of stealing? After everything they have done for you? You are sick. Madeline, you really need help." I stared at the screen. The gaslighting was breathtaking in its speed. I was not asking for money. I was asking for paper. But to a thief, a request for transparency feels like an accusation of theft. I typed back, "I am requesting documents. That is it." I blocked her number for the rest of the workday. I had to focus. I was 3 weeks into the new job at Hawthorne and Vale, and I was still learning the ropes. I could not afford to slip. But the war was following me to work. That afternoon, I opened my work email to find a message from an unrecognizable address. Truthseeker4492, protonmail.com. The subject line was, "Ask what really happened the night Grandma changed her will." My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked around the open-plan office. My colleagues were typing, drinking coffee, laughing softly in the break room. No one was looking at me. I opened the email. There was no text in the body, just an attachment, a JPEG image. I clicked it. It was a blurry, low-light photograph of a document. It looked like the signature page of a legal instrument. I squinted at the screen. It was a notarization stamp. The signature above it was shaky, my grandmother's. But the date on the stamp was October 14th. My grandmother had died on October 12th. I felt a cold prickle of sweat break out on my hairline. Someone had notarized a signature 2 days after she was dead. Or they had backdated a document she signed later. No, that didn't make sense. If she was dead, she couldn't sign, unless the signature was forged, or unless the document was created earlier and they just needed a stamp to make it look legitimate. And the notary made a mistake. Whatever it was fraud. I sat there, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and realized the scale of this. This wasn't just about a trust fund. This was a crime. And my parents, my respectable, church-going parents, were involved. And Kendra? Kendra was the beneficiary of the crime. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then to Sarah. I did not reply to the sender. I went to get a glass of water. My hands were trembling. I walked to the break room, trying to regulate my breathing. As I was filling my cup, a woman named Jessica, one of the other senior consultants, walked in. She looked uncomfortable. "Hey, Madeline," she said, keeping her voice low. "Do you have a minute?" "Sure," I said. She glanced at the door to make sure we were alone. "I just wanted to give you a heads up. I was walking past the HR office earlier, and I heard them on the phone. They mentioned your name. My stomach dropped. It sounded weird." Jessica said, "Someone called the ethics line. They were saying they were a concerned relative. Something about you being unstable and having a history of outbursts." The room spun. Kendra. She wasn't just texting my cousins. She was calling my employer. She was trying to kill my career before it even started. "Did you hear anything else?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. Jessica shook her head. "No, but the HR director looks serious. I just thought you should know. Thank you. Jessica, I really appreciate it." I walked back to my desk. I did not sit down. I picked up my laptop and walked straight to the HR director's office. I knocked. "Come in," said a voice. I opened the door. The HR director, a man named Mr. Henderson, looked up. He looked surprised to see me. "Madeline, I was just about to come find you." "I know," I said. I closed the door behind me and took a seat. "I am going to save us both some time. Mr. Henderson, you received a call this morning from a woman claiming to be my sister, or perhaps my mother, expressing concern about my mental health." Mr. Henderson blinked. He adjusted his glasses. "Well, yes, we did receive a call. It is confidential, of course, but the nature of the allegations—" "Mr. Henderson," I said, opening my laptop, "I am currently in the process of disentangling myself from a financially abusive family system. My sister has a documented history of sabotaging my professional opportunities whenever I attempt to establish independence." I turned the laptop around. I had opened the folder labeled Evidence. Here's a screenshot of a social media post she made implying I was having a breakdown. Dated 2 days after I accepted this offer. Here is a photo of the lock on the closet she trapped me in on the day of my interview. And here is the cease and desist letter my attorney sent to her last week regarding defamation. Mr. Henderson stared at the screen. He looked at the photo of the oiled lock. He looked at the legal letter. "I want to be very clear," I said. "I am perfectly healthy. I am performing at a high level. This call was a retaliation tactic because I refused to give her access to my bank accounts." Mr. Henderson let out a long breath. He looked relieved. "I see," he said. "That provides a lot of context. The caller was very persistent. She claimed you were a liability. She is projecting." I said. Mr. Henderson nodded. He made a note in his file. "Thank you for being proactive. Madeline. We do not tolerate harassment of our employees, even from family. I will note this as a malicious external communication. If she calls again, we will direct her to legal." I walked out of that office feeling 10 pounds lighter. Kendra had fired a missile at my castle, but she didn't know I had reinforced the walls. She thought I would hide. She thought I would be ashamed. But shame requires secrecy, and I was done with secrets. The realization hit me then. Sharp and absolute. The lock-in. The closet. It wasn't just about stopping me from getting the job. It was about money. If I got this job, I would have enough money to hire a lawyer. I would have enough money to investigate the trust. I would have enough money to leave them. They weren't afraid of me failing. They were terrified of me succeeding. That evening, Kendra changed tactics. My phone lit up with a text. "Maddie, this has gone too far. Mom is a wreck. Dad is not sleeping. Can we just reset? Please. I want to take you to dinner. Just the two of us. We need to talk like sisters." I looked at the message. It was tempting. The part of me that was still a little girl. The part that just wanted a big sister who loved her. Wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. But then I remembered the delivery driver. I remembered the smirk. I remembered the key in her purse. I typed back, "I am willing to meet, but only at the Oak Room in Briar Glen." 7 o'clock, Friday. The Oak Room was a busy, high-end restaurant in the center of the city. It was public. It was well lit. It was neutral ground. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I was thinking somewhere quieter. She wrote, "Maybe come over to the house. Mom could make lasagna. We could sit on the patio." A chill went down my spine. The patio, the backyard, private, controlled, no witnesses. "No," I typed. "The Oak Room or nothing." "You are being so difficult," she replied. "Forget it." She refused. It was a tell, as clear as a neon sign. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to corner me. She wanted to get me back into her ecosystem, where the physics of reality bent around her will. If she couldn't control the environment, she wouldn't engage. I called Alyssa. She refused the public meeting. I said, "Of course she did." Alyssa said, "She cannot perform in public. She needs a stage she owns. I am coming over." I said, "I need another set of eyes on something." I went to Alyssa's apartment with a bottle of wine and my laptop. We sat on her floor. surrounded by takeout containers, and I showed her the anonymous email with the blurry photo. "This is sketchy," Alyssa said, zooming in on the pixelated stamp. "October 14th. That is definitely after your grandma died." "Who sent it?" I asked. "A disgruntled employee at the law firm?" Alyssa guessed. "Or maybe your dad?" "My dad? He is the weak link. Maddie. He is the enabler. But he is not the architect. Maybe the guilt is eating him alive." We spent the next 2 hours digging through my old email archives. I searched for Grandma, Trust, Bramwell. I found nothing new until Alyssa grabbed my mouse. "Wait," she said. "Look at this." She opened an email from 6 years ago. It was a forwarded message from Kendra to me, with the subject line, FWD, Holiday Schedule. It was a mundane email about Christmas plans, but Alyssa scrolled down to the bottom, past the replies, to the original forwarded chain. Kendra had forwarded an email from the estate attorney, Mr. Bramwell, to herself, and then accidentally included it in the chain she sent to me. The email from Bramwell read, "Kendra, per our discussion, I have removed the distribution schedule from the version Madeline will see. We will keep the original in the vault. Let me know if the capacity clause needs further tightening." I stared at the screen. The air left my lungs. 6 years ago, she knew. She wasn't just a beneficiary, she was the architect. She had been colluding with the lawyer to hide the distribution schedule from me. Per our discussion, she had lied. For years, every time she hugged me, every time she bought me coffee, every time she told me I was fragile, she knew she was stealing from me. She was actively engineering my poverty while pretending to support me. I felt a cold, hard knot form in the center of my chest. It wasn't anger anymore. It was hate. Pure, crystalline hate. I printed the email. "This is it," Alyssa said softly. "This is the smoking gun." "Not yet," I said. "This proves she knew. It doesn't prove the fraud. We need the original document." 2 days later, a package arrived at Sarah Jenkins' office. It was from Crescent Harbor Trust Services, the administrative company that handled the back end of the trust. I drove to Sarah's office on my lunch break. "We got something," Sarah said, her face grim, "but it is not everything." She slid a stack of papers across the desk. "They sent the administrative records," she said. "But look at page 4. I looked. The page numbers jumped from 3 to 5. "Where is page 4? "Missing," Sarah said. "They claim it was misfiled. But based on the index, page 4 is the section that names the trustees and their powers." "Of course it is," I said. "But look what they did include," Sarah said. She pulled a sheet of yellow legal paper from the back of the stack. It was a handwritten note, dated 7 years ago. The handwriting was Mr. Bramwell's. Note to file. Met with Kendra Ward regarding Madeline Ward's capacity. Family reports severe emotional volatility. Recommend invoking the protective clause to suspend distribution indefinitely. No medical evidence provided. But family affidavit sufficient. 7 years ago. I thought back to 7 years ago. I had just been promoted to manager at my old job. I had run a marathon. I was volunteering at the animal shelter. I was the most stable I had ever been. And while I was crossing the finish line of a marathon, my sister was sitting in a lawyer's office, telling him I was crazy, signing an affidavit to steal my future. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It wasn't sadness. It was the physical release of pressure. The narrative was a lie, all of it. I wasn't the reliable one who burned out. I wasn't the fragile sister. I was a woman who had been systematically gaslit and robbed by the people who were supposed to protect her. I wiped the tear away. "What do we do?" Sarah asked. "We can sue. We can file a petition to compel the missing page." "No," I said. I stood up. "I am not just going to sue. If I sue, they will drag it out for years. They will spend the trust money on legal fees fighting me. They will make it about my mental health. Then what? I am going to force them to show their hand." I said, "I am going to make the secrets toxic." I looked at the dates, the missing page, the forwarded email. The anonymous tip. Kendra thinks she is playing a social game. I said, She thinks she can win by making me look crazy to the aunts and cousins. She thinks this is about reputation. I picked up the capacity concern note, but she made a mistake. I said, she put it on paper. She involved a bank. She involved a lawyer. She turned a family dysfunction into a federal crime. I looked at Sarah. I want to audit the trust administration. I said, but I do not want to just send a letter. I want to wait. Wait for what? The Hawthorne and Vale Client Summit is in 3 weeks. I said, it is the biggest event of the year. My parents are coming. Kendra is coming. They think they are coming to see me receive an award. And I'm going to make sure that when they arrive, they walk into a trap they set for themselves. I gathered the papers. Kendra likes to strike when I'm about to succeed. I said, she won't be able to help herself. She will try to ruin the summit. She will try to cause a scene. I smiled, and it felt like the smile of a stranger. And I am going to let her. Moving to Briar Glen felt less like a relocation and more like a defection. I did not announce my departure. I simply signed the lease on a unit in a converted textile mill, a building with a key fob entry system, 24-hour concierge, and heavy, industrial doors, and hired a moving company that specialized in discretion for the first time in my adult life. My address was not public record within the family. I did not forward my mail to my parents' house. I did not give them a spare key for emergencies. I simply vanished from the physical ecosystem of the Ward family and reappeared 20 miles away. Behind a wall of brick and security codes, the distance acted as a clarifier. Without the daily static of my mother's guilt-tripping texts and Kendra's microaggressions, my nervous system began to unspool. I slept through the night. I stopped jumping when my phone buzzed. I focused on my new role at Hawthorne and Vale, diving into the complex data modeling that the job required. I was good at it. I was competent. I was sane. But silence, to a person like Kendra, is not peace. It is a vacuum, and Kendra abhorred a vacuum. For the first 2 weeks, she tried to bait me digitally. She tagged me in memes about sisters being best friends. She sent texts asking if I was still alive with crying laughing emojis. She sent a photo of a dress she thought I would like. I did not respond. I was a gray rock. I was a ghost. And then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, the ghost hunting began. My intercom buzzed at 7 o'clock. I was on my couch, reviewing a slide deck for the upcoming client summit. A glass of red wine untouched on the table. I frowned. I wasn't expecting a delivery. I walked to the wall unit and pressed the button to activate the camera. The grainy black and white screen flickered to life. Standing in the vestibule, looking wet and pathetic, was Kendra. She was dragging a large, wheelie suitcase. She was wearing a trench coat that was soaked through at the shoulders. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes wide and pleading. "Maddie?" she said, her voice distorted by the speaker. "I know you are there. Please buzz me in." My heart hammered a violent rhythm against my ribs, a physiological betrayal of the calm I had cultivated. How did she find me? I hadn't listed the address. I pressed the talk button. "Go away. Kendra. Maddie. Please," she cried, leaning into the speaker. "I left him. I left. I just need a place to crash. Just for one night. I have nowhere else to go." She didn't have a him to leave. She was single. This was a fabrication, a boundary test disguised as a crisis. She was betting that my conditioned role as the reliable sister would override my new boundaries. She was betting that I couldn't leave her standing in the rain. "I am not letting you in," I said, my voice steady. "You need to leave." "You cannot do this," she shouted. "I am your sister. It is pouring rain." I watched her on the screen. She wasn't just shouting. She was performing. She was looking around the lobby, checking if anyone was watching. She wanted an audience. She wanted me to be the villain who left her soaking wet sister on the street. I am not opening the door. "Kendra, if you do not leave, I will call building security." "Fine," she screamed. The sound echoed in the small vestibule. "Let everyone know what kind of person you really are. You heartless I cut the feed. The screen went black. My hands were shaking. not from fear, but from the adrenaline of holding the line. I had said no, and the world hadn't ended, but I knew she wouldn't leave. She would sit in that lobby until she was removed, or she would create enough of a scene that my neighbors would complain. I grabbed my coat and my umbrella. I went down the back elevator, the service entrance that opened into the alleyway. I walked around the block to the front of the building. Kendra was sitting on her suitcase in the vestibule, sobbing. A young couple was standing near the mailboxes, looking at her with concern. I opened the outer door. The couple looked relieved to see someone taking responsibility. "Kendra," I said. She looked up. Her face was a mask of tragedy, mascara running down her cheeks. "Maddie!" She stood up, reaching for me. "Thank God. I knew you would not." "Stop," I said, stepping back out into the rain. "We are not doing this here. There is a coffee shop on the corner. Grab your bag." She hesitated, looking at the warm, dry lobby behind me. "But I want to come up. I just want to dry off. Coffee shop," I said, "or I go back inside and call the police." She glared at me, the tragedy mask slipping for a microsecond to reveal the annoyance underneath. "Fine." We walked to the cafe in silence. The rain drummed against my umbrella. Kendra dragged her suitcase through the puddles, making a show of how heavy it was. Inside the cafe, it was bright and smelled of roasted beans. I ordered a black tea. Kendra ordered nothing. We sat at a small table in the back. "Start talking," I said, and dropped the "I left him" act. "We both know you are single." Kendra wiped her eyes with a napkin. She abandoned the crying strategy immediately. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You have to stop. Madeline, stop what? Stop digging. The letters, the lawyers, the credit freezes. You are tearing the family apart. Mom is a wreck. She is not sleeping. She is taking pills again. That is not my responsibility." I said, "I am asking for legal documents." "Kendra, if that is tearing the family apart, then the family is built on something very fragile. It is not about the documents," she hissed. "It is about respect. You are treating Mom and Dad like criminals." "They are withholding my property," I said. "That is criminal." She slammed her hand on the table. The couple at the next table looked over. Kendra lowered her voice, but the intensity remained. "You do not get it, do you? You think you are so smart with your new job and your fancy lawyer, but you do not know what you are touching. Then tell me." I said, "Tell me what I'm touching." Kendra looked at me. Her eyes were hard, flinty. The sisterly warmth was gone. "If you keep digging," she said slowly, "you will ruin Mom." I stared at her. Ruin Mom. Not hurt Mom's feelings, not stress Mom out. Ruin. Ruin her how? I asked. Kendra sat back, crossing her arms. "There are things you do not know, things Dad did, things Mom covered up. If you drag this into court, if you audit the trust, everything comes out. You will destroy their reputation. You will destroy their retirement. Is that what you want? Do you want to be the daughter who bankrupts her parents?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the fear. It was real. She wasn't just protecting her own access to the money. She was holding a grenade that she had helped assemble. This isn't about love. I realized it is about consequences. She is afraid I am going to blow up the safe house she has been living in, if they committed fraud. "Kendra, that is on them, not me. You are a monster," she whispered. "No," I said, standing up. "I am just awake." I left her there with her suitcase. I didn't pay for her coffee. I walked back to my building, entered the code, and went upstairs. I locked the door. 2 days later, the certified letter arrived. It was delivered to my office, which was a calculated move. It meant I had to sign for it in front of the receptionist. It meant the return address, Bramwell Pierce Legal, was visible to anyone who handled the mail. I took it to my desk and slit the envelope open with a letter opener. It wasn't a letter from a lawyer, it was a draft petition. In the matter of the welfare of Madeline J. Ward, petition for emergency guardianship and review of capacity. My blood turned to ice. I read the document. It was a masterpiece of fiction. It claimed that I had a history of severe emotional instability, citing the incident at my parents' house where I hallucinated being locked in a closet. It claimed I was estranged from reality and engaging in paranoid legal harassment of my elderly parents. It cited Kendra Ward as an interested party and concerned sibling. It was a threat. They hadn't filed it yet. It was stamped draft for review. It was a warning shot. Stop the audit, or we will file this. We will put this on the public record. We will make you fight for your own sanity in court. I felt the room spinning. This was the nuclear option. If they filed this, even if I won, the accusation would be out there. A guardianship petition. It was the kind of thing that ended careers. I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. I was hyperventilating. They are going to commit me, I gasped. They are going to take my rights away. Sarah's voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. Madeline, breathe, read me the header. I read it to her. Okay, Sarah said. Listen to me. This is a scare tactic. It is a piece of paper meant to terrify you, to get a guardianship in this state. They need 2 physicians to certify that you are incapacitated. Do they have that? No. I said, do you have a job? Do you pay your bills? Are you a danger to yourself? I have a job. I am fine. Then this is paper terrorism. Sarah said, and we are going to burn it down. Sarah didn't just respond. She went on the offensive. She drafted a letter to Bramwell Pierce that was less a correspondence and more a declaration of war. She pointed out that filing a guardianship petition in bad faith was a sanctionable offense. She noted that we had evidence of the closet incident, including a third-party witness, the delivery driver, which would prove the hallucination claim was perjury. She demanded that all future communication go through her office and stated that if they proceeded with this petition, we would countersue for abuse of process, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. If you file this petition, Sarah wrote, we will depose every member of the Ward family under oath regarding the administration of the grandmother's trust. We will open every closet. The power dynamic shifted overnight. Kendra could play the victim on Instagram. She could cry in a coffee shop, but she couldn't lie to a judge when I had a lawyer who was willing to burn the earth to prove the truth. They didn't file the petition, but the pressure caused a crack in the dam. On a Thursday night, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to him since the generous offer dinner. I answered, "Hello? Maddie?" His voice sounded old, thin. "I am here. Dad, I saw the letter your lawyer sent, about the perjury. I waited. I wasn't going to help him. We never meant for it to get like this." He said, his voice shook. "We just wanted everyone to be safe. Kendra said you were spiraling. She said you needed structure." Kendra lied. "Dad, and you knew it." There was a silence on the line, a heavy, guilty silence. "It was right after your grandmother died." He said softly, "The business, my hardware store, we were in trouble. Maddie, deep trouble. The recession hit us hard. I closed my eyes. There it was. So you raided the trust." I said, "We borrowed." He insisted, "We just borrowed against the principal. We were going to pay it back. But then Kendra found out." Kendra found out? She saw the papers on my desk. She was 23. Sharp as a tack, your sister. She told us she could help manage it. She said if we just restructured things, we wouldn't have to declare bankruptcy. Restructured. I repeated. "You mean if you cut me out?" "We didn't cut you out, Maddie. We just delayed. Kendra said if you got the money too young, you would leave. You would go to New York or somewhere big, and you would leave us behind. She said it was better to keep the family together." I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just greed. It was pathetic, cowardly weakness. My father had let his youngest daughter blackmail him into robbing his eldest daughter, all under the guise of keeping the family together. "She has the papers. Dad." I said, "Doesn't she?" He sighed, a sound like a tire losing air. "She keeps everything. She made me sign a modification, saying she was a co-trustee, just temporarily, to help with the loan. And let me guess, the temporary part never ended. I am sorry. Maddie, I am so sorry. Are you sorry enough to send me the documents? I asked. I can't, he whispered. She has the keys to the safe. He hung up. It wasn't a full confession. He hadn't agreed to testify, but he had given me the map, a modification, co-trustee, temporary. I called Sarah. Subpoena the modification. I said, specifically ask for any documents naming Kendra Ward as a temporary trustee. 2 weeks later, the document arrived. It was a single page. Buried in a stack of compliance updates from the trust administration firm, Sarah laid it out on her desk. Appointment of successor, trustee, temporary, due to the incapacitation of the primary trustee, Robert Ward, illness. Kendra Ward is hereby appointed as temporary co-trustee with full signatory powers, effective immediately. This appointment shall remain in effect until such time as the primary trustee is deemed recovered, or until a period of... Sarah pointed to the bottom of the page. The expiration clause is blank, she said. They never filled in the end date. So she has been a temporary trustee for 10 years? I asked. Effectively, yes. But here's the kicker. Look at the date. I looked. It was dated 7 years ago, the same week I ran the marathon. The same week Kendra filed the concern report about my stability. They used the concern report to justify Dad's illness, stress, probably, and install Kendra as the boss, Sarah explained. And then Kendra used her new power to freeze your distribution. Why? I asked. Why that specific week? Sarah flipped to another page. The original trust instrument. Clause 4. B. Distribution of principal shall occur upon the beneficiary completing 2 years of continuous, full-time employment. I did that. I said, I hit my 2-year mark at the marketing firm that same month. Exactly. Sarah said, you qualified. You unlocked the money. Kendra knew that, so she created a crisis. She filed a report saying you were unstable, which triggered a pause in the distribution, and simultaneously had your father sign over control to her so she could enforce it. I sat back in the chair. It was clockwork. It was a machine. She stole 2 years of my life, I said. She stole the house I could have bought. She stole my confidence. She made me think I was crazy so she could keep the cash flow to the hardware store. And now? Sarah asked. Now, I said. Looking at the calendar. Now we finish it. The Hawthorne and Vale Client Summit was scheduled for October 12th, the anniversary of my grandmother's death. It was a coincidence, but it felt like fate. I knew Kendra. I knew her rhythm. She couldn't let me have a big day. She couldn't let me be the center of attention in a room full of powerful people. If she couldn't stop me with a closet, and she couldn't stop me with a legal threat, she would try to stop me with a scene. She would come to the summit. She would try to humiliate me in front of the partners. She would try to prove to the world that I was the unstable, fragile girl she had created on paper. I didn't panic. I planned. I met with Mr. Henderson in HR again. I met with the head of building security, a retired cop named Miller. I have a family member who may attempt to crash the event. I told Miller, she is not on the guest list. She may claim to be delivering something urgent. She may claim to be distressed. We will keep an eye out. Miller said, do you want us to bar her at the door? No. I said. Miller looked surprised. No? If you bar her at the door, she will scream in the lobby. I said, she will make a scene that the clients will hear. She thrives on being the victim. Then what do you want us to do? I laid out the plan. It was precise. It was cold. It used her own momentum against her. If she comes. I said, let her in. Escort her to the green room. Tell her I am waiting for her. And then, call me. Miller nodded slowly. Understood. I spent the week preparing my presentation. I worked late. I ate salads at my desk. I was the picture of corporate efficiency. But inside, I was a wire pulled tight. On the morning before the summit, my phone buzzed. A text from Kendra. I stared at it. It was a picture of a flower arrangement. Lilies, funeral flowers. Congratulations on your little summit. The text read, hope nothing. Stressful happens. Would hate for you to get overwhelmed again. I looked at the words. Stressful. Overwhelmed. She was telegraphing her punch. She was telling me she was coming. She was going to try to trigger me, to make me crack, to make me look overwhelmed, so she could point and say, "See? I told you she couldn't handle it." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot. I saved it to a folder on my desktop. I didn't name the folder Kendra or Family or Evidence. I named it Day of. I closed my laptop. I went to the window and looked out at the skyline of Briar Glen. The leaves were turning gold and crimson. The air was crisp. I was done being the reliable sister. I was done being the victim. Tomorrow, I was going to be the trustee. The morning of the client summit dawned with a sky the color of polished steel. The air in Briar Glen was crisp, carrying the scent of turning leaves and expensive coffee. I stood in front of the mirror in the hotel suite Hawthorne and Vale had booked for the speakers. Adjusting the lapel of my navy blazer, I looked different. It was not just the haircut, which was sharper, or the clothes, which were tailored. It was the eyes. The woman looking back at me did not look like she was waiting for permission to exist. She looked like she owned the room. I checked my phone. It was 7 o'clock. No texts from Kendra. No texts from my mother. The silence was heavy, pregnant with the threat of what was coming. But I did not let it rattle me. I had a schedule. I had a security badge that clipped to my belt with a satisfying snap. I had a team. I went down to the ballroom. The venue was a cavernous space of glass and light, buzzing with the low-frequency hum of 200 industry leaders networking over pastries. I found Miller, the head of security, standing near the registration desk. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. "All quiet on the Western Front," he said, his voice low. "Keep watching." I said, "She will not be late. She likes an audience." I walked into the main hall. Mr. Henderson, the HR director, caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, something warm and unfamiliar. It was safety. Not the safety of hiding, but the safety of structure. These people did not love me, and that was exactly why I could trust them. They operated on rules. If I followed the rules, they protected me, in my family. The rules changed every time Kendra changed her mood. I went on stage at 10 o'clock. My presentation was on risk mitigation in volatile markets. I spoke for 45 minutes without looking at my notes. I commanded the stage. I moved with purpose. When I finished, the applause was loud, genuine, and validating. I walked off the stage feeling high on adrenaline, my blood singing with the realization that I was good at this. I was really, really good at this. I was standing near the hydration station, accepting a handshake from a potential client, when my earpiece buzzed. "Ms. Ward." Miller's voice crackled in my ear. "We have a situation at the north entrance." I excused myself, my smile never faltering, and walked toward the side corridor. "Talk to me," I said into the lapel mic. Female subject matching the description of Kendra Ward just bypassed the registration desk. Miller said, "She is claiming she is family and has an emergency delivery for you. She is carrying a garment bag." A garment bag. I stopped walking. A cold shiver ran down my spine, echoing the sensation of the interview morning. She was replaying the greatest hits. She was bringing a suit to save me, implying to anyone who would listen that I was unprepared, messy, in need of her rescue. "Where is she now?" I asked. She intercepted Elias Thorne near the coat check. "She is engaging him." Elias was the senior partner. He was the man who signed my paychecks. "Do not let her make a scene in the hallway." I said, "Initiate the protocol. Copy that." I walked to the designated meeting room, Conference Room B, a soundproof space tucked away from the main thoroughfare. Mr. Henderson was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a calm, neutral expression. On the table sat a conference phone. "Dial her in." I said, "Mr." Henderson punched the number. A moment later, the crisp, professional voice of Sarah Jenkins filled the room. "I am here. Madeline," Sarah said. "I am recording on my end." I took a seat. I folded my hands on the table. I waited. 2 minutes later, the door opened. Miller walked in first, holding the door. Then came Kendra. She looked frantic. It was a beautiful performance. Her hair was slightly mussed, her cheeks flushed. She was dragging a heavy black garment bag, and she was talking fast. Her voice pitched high enough to carry but low enough to sound confidential. I just need to find her. She forgot her medication. She cannot be up there without it. She gets so confused. She stopped when she saw me. I was sitting at the head of the table, flanked by the HR director and a security guard. I was not crying. I was not messy. I was perfectly still. Kendra froze. Her eyes darted around the room, assessing the threat level. She saw the badges. She saw the recording light on the phone. "Maddie?" she said, her voice faltering. I brought your suit. The gray one. I know you hate the navy one. Sit down." "Kendra?" I said. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Sit down." She looked at Miller, who gestured to the chair opposite me. She let go of the garment bag. It slumped to the floor like a dead body. She sat down, smoothing her skirt, her face shifting from frantic savior to confused victim. "I do not understand," she said, looking at Mr. Henderson. "I'm just trying to help my sister. She has been under so much stress. I was talking to that nice man in the hall, Mr. Thorne, and I was just explaining that sometimes Madeline gets a little lost. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Ward, I am the Director of Human Resources for Hawthorne and Vale. This is a secure corporate event. You are not on the guest list." Kendra laughed. A brittle, nervous sound. "I am family. Family does not need a guest list. I am here to support her. You are here to sabotage me." I said. Kendra's eyes snapped to mine. "Sabotage? Maddie, do not be dramatic. You are doing it again. You are getting paranoid." I tapped the phone on the table. "Kendra, this is Sarah Jenkins, my attorney. You are on speaker." Kendra stiffened. "Why do you have a lawyer?" "Because, Ms. Ward." Sarah's voice cut through the air, distinct and sharp. "We are documenting this interaction as part of the ongoing harassment case." "Harassment?" Kendra stood up, her face flushing red. "This is ridiculous. I drove 2 hours to bring you a suit. I am trying to be a good sister. And you ambush me with security?" She looked at Mr. Henderson, tears welling up in her eyes on command. "You have to understand," she said, her voice trembling. "Madeline is not well. She has episodes. She imagines things. We have been trying to get her into treatment for months. I am terrified she is going to have a breakdown right here at your conference. It was a masterstroke. If I got angry, I proved her point. If I yelled, I was unstable. I did not yell. I opened a file folder. "Mr. Henderson," I said calmly, "please look at the document labeled Exhibit A. Mr." Henderson picked up the paper. It was the incident report from the delivery company. "This is an affidavit from a FedEx driver," I said, looking at Kendra. "Dated 6 weeks ago. It states that he heard a woman screaming for help from a locked closet in the Ward residence. It states that another woman, identified as Kendra Ward, attempted to dismiss the screaming as old house noises and only unlocked the door when threatened with police intervention." Kendra's mouth opened, then closed. "That is a lie," she whispered. "The driver is willing to testify." Sarah said from the phone, "We also have the time-stamped photo of the key in your purse." "Kendra." I slid another paper across the table. "Exhibit B." I said, "A screenshot of a text message received yesterday. Hope nothing stressful happens." "And Exhibit C." I continued, "The capacity concern report you filed 7 years ago. The one where you claimed I was volatile to freeze my trust distribution. On the same week I was promoted at my previous job." The room was silent. The air conditioning hummed. Kendra looked at the papers. She looked at the HR director, who was reading the delivery driver's report with a frown of distaste. She realized, in that moment, that her magic did not work here, in our family kitchen. Facts were negotiable. Feelings were facts. But here, in this glass-walled room, a document was a document. She sat back down slowly. The tears evaporated. Her face went cold and hard. The face I had seen in the cafe. "You are a bitch," she said. "Mr." Henderson looked up. "Miss Ward, please refrain from abusive language." She ignored him. She stared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You think you are so smart?" she hissed. "You think you can just embarrass me? You think Mom and Dad are going to let you do this?" I checked my watch. "Actually," I said, "they should be here any minute." "You called them, didn't you? Before you came in? You told them to come save me?" Kendra said nothing. She didn't have to. I knew her playbook. Miller tapped his earpiece. "Ms. Ward, there is an older couple at the security desk asking for you. Send them in," I said, 2 minutes later. My parents walked in. My mother looked frantic, clutching her purse to her chest. My father looked pale and exhausted, dragging his feet. "Madeline!" my mother cried when she saw me. She rushed forward, ignoring the security guard. "Kendra called us. She said you were having a panic attack. She said you were locking yourself in a room." She stopped. She looked at the room. She saw me, sitting calmly at the head of the table. She saw Kendra, stone-faced and angry. She saw the HR director. She saw the security guard. She looked at the garment bag on the floor. "Madeline?" my father asked. "What is going on? Sit down." "Dad," I said. "We do not have time to sit," my mother said, her voice shrill. "We need to get you home. Kendra said you were making a scene." Kendra lied. "Mom," I said, again. "I am not lying," Kendra shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "She is setting me up. She is trying to ruin us." "That is enough." Sarah's voice boomed from the speakerphone. My parents jumped. They stared at the phone. "Who is that?" my mother whispered. "That is my attorney." I said, "And this is Mr. Henderson, the head of HR, and this is Mr. Miller, head of security." My mother looked around, shrinking into her coat. She realized, finally, that this was not a family squabble. This was a tribunal. "I wanted you to be here," I said, looking at my parents, "because I am done with the triangulation. I am done with the whispers. We are going to have this conversation with witnesses." "Madeline, please," my father said. "Not here." "Yes, here," I said, "because at home, you rewrite history. Here, everything is recorded." I picked up the trust documents. I know about the temporary trusteeship. "Dad, I know you signed control over to Kendra 7 years ago. I know you used the capacity concern to block my money so you could float the hardware store." My mother gasped. She looked at my father. "You told her?" "I found out." I said, "And today? Kendra tried to do it again. She came here to tell my bosses I was crazy. She tried to destroy my career so you could keep your little arrangement going." I looked at Kendra, but it is over. I turned to the phone. "Sarah? We filed the petition this morning." Sarah said, "We have filed for the immediate removal of Kendra Ward as co-trustee due to breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. We are also filing a motion for a forensic audit of the trust's administration over the last 10 years. "An audit?" my mother squeaked. But that will show everything." I said, "Every penny you took, every document you forged." Kendra stood up. "You cannot do that. It is family money. It is my money," I shouted. The volume of my voice made them all jump. It was the first time I had raised it. "It was my money," I said, lowering my voice to a lethal whisper. "It was my safety. It was my future. And you stole it. Not because you needed it, but because you wanted to own me." I looked at my parents. "So here's the choice." I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. "The audit is happening. That is not negotiable. Kendra is being removed. That is not negotiable. But the lawsuit? The criminal charges for fraud? That is up to me." My father looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Maddie, if you want me to stop," I said, "then Kendra leaves. Now. She walks out of this room. She walks out of the trust. And she never speaks to me again. You stop enabling her. You stop lying for her. You sign the papers admitting what happened, and you step down as trustees. And if we do not, Kendra challenged, if we stick together, then I burn it all down. I said, I sue you for every dime. I press charges for the fraud. I drag the family name through the mud in open court, and I will win, because I have the evidence. The room hung in silence. The choice was brutal, but it was fair. It was the first fair thing that had happened in this family in decades. My mother looked at Kendra. She looked at the daughter she had protected, the daughter she had favored, the daughter who had turned into a monster. Then she looked at the HR director, watching her with judgment. She looked at the security guard. She looked at the reality of the situation. Bob. My mother whispered to my father, Bob, we cannot go to court. The store. My father closed his eyes. He let out a long, shuddering breath. He looked at Kendra. You should go. Kendra, he said softly. Kendra recoiled as if he had slapped her. Dad? Go, he said, his voice cracking. You went too far. Kendra looked at Mom. Mom? My mother looked at the floor. She was crying, but she did not reach out. She did not argue. The survival instinct had finally kicked in. Kendra looked at me. Her face was a ruin of shock and fury. She had lost, for the first time in her life. The gravity hadn't bent around her. She had hit the wall. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I said, Miller, please escort Ms. Ward from the building. If she returns, call the police. Miller stepped forward. Let's go, ma'am. Kendra grabbed her purse. She did not grab the garment bag. She walked out of the room, her heels clicking a sharp, retreating rhythm. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was heavy. My parents looked like ghosts. We will send the papers over tomorrow, Sarah said from the phone. I looked at my parents. I felt a profound sadness, a grief for the family I never really had. But mostly, I felt light. You can go now, I said. Maddie. My mother wept. We love you. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched me drown for years and called it swimming. I know you think you do, I said. And that is the saddest part. I turned my back on them. I looked at Mr. Henderson. I believe I have a summit to attend. My parents left. I did not watch them go. I finished the day. I shook hands. I smiled. I drank sparkling water at the mixer. I was the picture of success. That evening, I sat in my attorney's office. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a quiet exhaustion. We did it, Sarah said, pouring 2 fingers of scotch into a glass. She is out. The parents are folding. The audit will take months, but you will get your money. I nodded. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the key. I had the key. There is one more thing, Sarah said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a photocopy of an old yellowed envelope. This came up in the initial discovery from the bank. She said, it was listed in the inventory of the safe deposit box, but it was never opened. It is addressed to you. From your grandmother. I took the paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Spidery, elegant script, to Madeline, to be read when she is ready. Why didn't I get this? I asked. The trust instructions said it was to be delivered with the first distribution. Sarah said, since the distribution never happened. I stared at the envelope. We can petition to get the original unsealed, Sarah said. But I have to warn you, if we unseal it, it becomes part of the court record. Whatever is in there, whatever reason she had for structuring the trust this way, it becomes public. It might explain why your parents were so desperate. It might expose things about the family history that cannot be put back in the box. I ran my thumb over the photocopy. My grandmother, the woman who had left me the money, the woman who had seen something in the family dynamic. Even back then, that required a trust, a lawyer, and a condition of independence. She knew. I said softly, she knew they would try to eat me. Probably. Sarah said, do you want to open it? I thought about the last 10 years, the closet, the gaslighting, the fear. I thought about the silence in my apartment in Briar Glen, the peace. I looked at the photocopy. If I open it, I said, I have to acknowledge that the rot goes back generations. I have to acknowledge that this isn't just about Kendra. It is the whole tree. And? I looked at Sarah. And I am the one holding the axe. I put the paper down on the desk. File the petition. I said, I want to know everything. Sarah nodded and made a note. I walked out of the office into the cool night air of Briar Glen. The streetlights were humming. I walked to my car, my keys jingling in my hand. I unlocked the door. I got in. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, listening to the engine idle. I was alone. I had no parents to call. I had no sister to text. The silence was absolute. But as I pulled out onto the road, merging into the stream of traffic, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and red, I realized something. The silence wasn't empty. It was mine. Thank you so much for listening to Madeline's story. It is a heavy journey, but one that I know resonates with many people who have had to fight for their own reality. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to set a boundary that felt impossible? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, resilience, and the long road to truth. See you in the next one.